Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Parth Pethani, and I'm here at Prologis, Director of Warehouse Innovation and Design. Thank you for joining, everyone. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule and spending some time with us. I think before we get started into what is the panel discussion, we wanted to take a minute to help us understand the motivation behind this webinar, help us understand why we are doing this. I think that all comes back to our conversations with our clients. I think one of the as Prologis, we have a lot of conversations with our client, and one of the theme that we are seeing evolving is not about I have a problem with labor, but the problem with labor availability, and that conversation leads into natural evolution of hey, what kind of robots do I need, and when do I not need the robots or the automation around it? The question has become less of if I need a robot or automation, but the question has become more of when and how and what type of robots or automation is needed. And that's taking inspiration from those questions, those conversations. We decided to reach out to our industry partners and help us and get this webinar started. So thank you everyone for joining. And before we kick things started, I just want to make sure for a housekeeping stuff, this webinar will be recorded, so you will have access to this webinar if you need to circulate internally afterwards. Please enter your questions into Q&A box on the right hand side, and my team will make sure that those questions are presented to the right individuals and get that answered if we are not able to get that answered during this conversation. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining again. Moving to the next slide, I just wanted to get a level set before we go into what the panel conversation would be and why topics which will be covered. So I think the important thing to understand is how do we define warehouse automation and robotics? I think that there are terms around it. There are different terms, different definitions around it. But the way we look at it is like at the end, they both have the same goal. The goal is to improve efficiency, maximize floor space, and support the warehouse associates. The difference between the automation and robotics is that automation is a little bit fixed. Robotics provides the flexibility. Automation works on a predefined set of instructions, whereas robots can make a decision on the edge. Those are the primary difference which we understand between automation and robotics, but the end they all provide the same purpose, which is improving the operational efficiency, maximizing floor space, and supporting the warehouse associates. Now, as we understand this definition of warehouse robotics and automation, let's get into understanding what the investment horizon looks like. So moving to the next slide, you can see that more than 52% of investment, if you look at the first stacked bar chart, more than 52% of investment in logistics and fulfillment will be done in automation over the next 5 years. And if you look at the range, anything between $25 million to $500 million is going to be invested into automation over the next 5 years. This is a McKinsey report. So what this tells me, at least from my perspective, it's a transformation that is happening. We are not talking about $1 million, $2 million projects. We are talking about $25 million projects, $500 million projects that will revamp the complete warehousing net strategies for a lot of retailers, a lot of 3PL industry as well. So with a lot of this investment going into the next 5 years, the transformations that is happening, we have to take a cautious approach as well, right? There are barriers. Let's should be told there are barriers to automation. So if we see the next slide, you will see there are barriers like cost, change management, implementation complexity at a rate which will reduce the transformation scale. But I think when you have the right partners by your side, I think there are levers that you can pull to address that challenges and address those barriers that can help you get that competitive edge that you need in a landscape that we are working in this macro environment, right? So I think with that barriers in mind, the investment that is going into this space, with that definition into the space, I think it's time. I think we need to start thinking about it. And I think that's where I would like to introduce my panel today. So moving to the next slide, I think my panels are about to be joining. So we have Ninaad from FIQ, Jason from Locus, and Jon from AutoStore, who will be joining us today. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Nina, why don't you start us with a quick introduction, followed by Jason and then John?
First of all, thank you for having me on the webinar. This is an exciting topic and really close to my heart. Ninaad Acharya, co-founder, CEO here at FulfillmentIQ.
Jason, why don't you go ahead?
Hey guys, my name is Jason Lum. I am the Strategic Alliance Manager for Locus Robotics. Been here for about 6+ years, and this is going to make me sound really old, but I've been doing industrial automation for the last 30. So I've walked a lot of warehouses in my past.
Nice, awesome. John?
Hi, gentlemen. Great to be with you guys. I'm Jon Schechter. I lead our business development team for North America at AutoStore. And maybe before we get started, I know this was advertised with Hunter. We're glad to be joined and led by Parth, but maybe just a quick shout out and thinking of Hunter and his family in this time. He couldn't be here today.
Yep. Yes, definitely a tough time for the Hilal family. Hopefully they're doing well. So yeah, let's get into the crux of it. I think, John, why don't you lead us off here? I think we were looking at the slide right before this. I think one of the challenge with automation and robotics, or at least the barriers that we understand, is around complexity and the cost around it. Based on your conversations with clients across your vertical, what have you seen? Just paint a picture for the audience.
Yeah, I think because of the transformational nature that you talked about, when companies are looking at spending $5 million to $50 million, it starts to be more than one person can do on their own, right? It's not any individual's budget or any individual's action. It takes a huge team internal to an organization. It takes your CFO to approve and understand the economics of things. It takes budget that crosses from transportation to operations to broader supply chain. And that organizational complexity adds challenge. But then there's of course, the technology complexity, where you need good software partners like FulfillmentIQ. You need the right technologies, hardware, robotics, or other traditional automation that can link up. And so that means it takes a number of important people around a table to all agree and row in the right direction. And I think that is one of the major barriers. I think maybe just the one other piece of it is just when they think of cost, I think folks tend to forget that they already have this inherent budget. They're already spending this money or bleeding this money through OpEx. And we're trying to show people, if you invest more now, or you take a different strategy towards how you spend your money month to month, then you might be able to get the maximization of your potential of the labor and space you have. Whether that's a robot as a service model that's purely an OpEx, or whether that's some larger scale network change or investment in a fixed automation system.
Makes sense. What are your thoughts on this?
So, I cannot say it much better than John at this point, but I'll put it this way. Complexity, it is how complex do you want to make it, right? So what are you trying to solve for and how complex can you make it? And then when it comes to cost, you have to remember the word automation. A simple auto bagging machine that could cost you $15,000 is also considered automation. And a complex implementation like an AutoStore, because it drives that efficiency and throughput, is also considered automation. And you can go even more, from a range perspective, right? I've seen facilities that have $300 million of automation, and facilities that do $5,000 to $10,000 worth of automation to start with, right? So yeah, from a cost perspective, it's a large range on what you are trying to solve for. From a complexity standpoint, you can decide to make it as complex as you want, or you can also try to simplify by choosing the right partners and the right solutions that work very well with each other. Complexities come in when you have partners that don't work with each other and you try to cobble together a bunch of stuff that are just not compatible.
Makes sense. I think you touched a very important point. I think the cost and the partnerships. So Jason, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to tell you right now that John just schmacked a little bit ago. When it comes down to you're already spending that money, why not use it more wisely? So on average, an average unit pick out there is around 30 cents. And when it comes down to automation, it is how do we reduce that? How do we drive that per pick number down? Is it really on the automation side, if I can reduce that down from 30 cents to 15 cents, how does that impact that number that John had said before? How does that drive the overall labor process out there? How does that drive the SLAs that need to be pushed out there? How does that drive for the future when you start thinking about everything about automation? Dwight Clappett, the guy from Gartner, VP, research, fellow, all of it, stated at one point in time, it's not if, it's when you put a robotic type automation inside your facility, because it's happening right now, because of everything that's happening in the global world. The distribution centers really have to be flexible enough in order to handle all the changes.
Yep, that's such a solid point, and thank you all for the insight. I think you all talked the key points that I actually note down was the cost, flexible, creative financing around it, and of course the partnership. And I think that's what I think we are also trying at Prologis essentially is like really solve that problem for our tenants. That how can we bring in the cost down, help with the creative financing, and then of course build the partner ecosystems and help our clients go to implement robots and automation quicker or easily. And I think that also brings me to the next question. I think, Jason, you might be the closest to this one. It's like I want to understand the change management perspective of it, like the training associates and just around the managing a change. Can you paint a picture for us? What have you seen work best or challenges? Just help us understand the change management perspective around automation and robotics.
Love to. Thanks, Parth. Over the years, the usual process is that someone has a cart, they push a cart, and this has been the last 30 years of life for a picking associate out there. We are rolling into the fourth industrial revolution. These associates really want to have an upskill of new tech. They want to be working with the technology that's going to drive for the future. So all of a sudden, it's no longer hey, am I going to be a change manager inside these warehouses? It's more like, how do I keep retention for the labor pool that's already out there? How do I keep those guys? The other side of it is that keeping your associates happy, it's huge. It's all about change management in a positive way to keep the associates in a more collaborative way when it comes down to automation.
That's a great point. Ninaad, what are your thoughts?
I mean, listen, the change management from, just to talk about the transition and the change itself, even we had to go through change, right? Like the amount of, proliferation or democratization of the automation robotic solutions that were not as accessible previously by everyone, leadership and operations had to first go through that change management to say, yeah, here it is. But I think when it comes to the user base itself, there is a level of fear. What does this mean for my job, right? Like there is a job security concern. And it's specifically in a brownfield environment versus a greenfield, I think that's really critical, that there is change management, continuous learning, creating support roles and functions around it. Again, it could be, I'm going to again go with the example. It could be as simple as a auto bagging machine and people will be like, this just eases my life, versus I'm going to be working with robots, or there is this big box that just delivers stuff to me, a goods to person type capability. I think you need to recognize what you are implementing and have a really solid change management plan that includes skill development, comprehensive training, going through like a learning cycle, creating support roles, and specifically aligning with your culture and making sure that you explain to people that this skills you up to go to the next level. That is the biggest transition. Everything else, you are driving towards profitability, productivity, whatever you are doing that automation for.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think skill development, I've personally seen challenges myself, like from a skill development perspective to hiring the right maintenance tech and working around that. John, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, no, I think that the training and bring everybody along and going back to something Jason sort of alluded to when it comes to, hey, people are used to pushing carts. They've been doing that for decades, and that's traditionally what you did in a warehouse, but effects anymore. They're using a smartphone outside of work. They have all this technology enabled in other parts of their life. If they show up to a warehouse with carts and checklists and paper pick lists, they're going to reject that as a career path and want to look for a technology enabled job. And I sort of think of the automation we have today. I use the analogy of a forklift. Like, can you imagine hiring people to drag forklifts manually with a wheeled pallet jack rather than a forklift driving that pallet? And it's the same thing with AMRs and goods to person systems and packaging automation. Like, that is the tool for someone to get their job done in a distribution or fulfillment environment in today's era. And if you don't have that, you're one, ceding market share to your competition, but you're also not going to attract and retain the workforce that you really need. The fears that I think most employees, and I think it was very low on the chart you showed, there's very few fears of adoption of this stuff at this point. I think maybe years ago, there was the fear that the general purpose Rosie the robot, humanoid was coming to replace all those jobs, but it's very much not the case. It's, this is the laptop for the blue collar fulfillment workforce. This is the forklift for the modern age of each fulfillment.
Yeah.
Are we going to be poking fun at the humanoid robots in the warehousing environment for the time being, guys? I'm just asking.
I was about to say we can have a webinar on humanoid robots in warehousing. This is great. I appreciate you all the insights. I think this definitely resonates with what we are seeing, and I put down some notes as well. So now, like, we talked about the barriers to the automation, or just the perceived barriers to the automation and the robotics field. But let's say someone is ready to start that journey. They're like, yeah, I know I need automation, I need robots. So thinking about that robotics journey and starting on that robotics journey, how do I figure out what is the right robot solution fit or automation solution fit for me? And I think this is what I like. Ninaad, I want you to lead here. Like, help us understand, how should I think about is it a packaging? Is it goods to person? It is AMR? What's the right solution fit for me?
So the first thing I'll tell you very quickly on this front is, even though all of us live and breathe this industry, the amount of innovation and change that happens in this space, right? Like there is the innovators and then the repeaters, right? Like, so the repeater capabilities that are out there, and this is not my terminology. Someone from Amazon used it, so I'm going to reuse it. There are innovators that you want to check out on what's happening on a regular basis. And then there is the repeaters, which is like your fixed automation to see how much small changes that have actually occurred in the industry. Even though we all spend so much time in there, I am absolutely dumbfounded by going to industry events to first recognize what exists. So an event like a Modex, right? And being there to see what's on the floor. But in parallel, before you go there, having your numbers. This industry cannot be more mathematically correct, right? Like, you can drive everything through numbers. You have your labor cost, you have your throughput expectation, you have your growth, you know what your throughput currently for each single process happens to be, and then saying, where is my low-hanging fruit? What are the available technologies? And to the really good point both Jon and Jason made, it's like, you are already spending. It's now saying, how do I spend this the right way? The interesting part is you also have choices on how to go about spending for it. So I think start with the numbers, industry events, attend webinars like this, learn, find the low-hanging fruit, and then address, right, value versus effort. So greatest value with the lowest amount of effort is what you want to target first. If you are starting your journey, of course, if you are doing greenfield, you got $300 million. Go ahead and bring every single piece of tech you want, one shot. But ideal state, brownfield, that's what you want to do.
No, that's a great point. I tell to my engineers that it's a game of 3,600 seconds. If you improve 3,600 seconds, you get it. And I think we should make a clip of what Ninaad you just said. I think we should circulate across the industry that this is what you should be starting with. So following on the same question, Jason, what are your thoughts when you think about the right robot solution or automation solution fit for your operations?
Wow, you want me to follow Ninaad? I'm not quite sure I can do that. All right, so the first one is that I'm going to quote Peter Drucker, and I know that he's like the father of warehousing, but you can't improve what you can't measure. And it's basically back down to what Ninaad said. It is, if I can go, what is the biggest bang for the dollar out there? That's what you're looking for. And you don't have to go to this big, I'm going to change everything in my warehouse at one time. It can be bite-sized, make it edible for your warehouse. The one thing that I do love is the Prologis team. You guys really come in as a consultant. You guys look holistically at what's going on. I heard this earlier today. I'm going to use it. Prologis is very much like a Sherpa. They carry the load. They have the knowledge base. They bring it all together, and they can say, all right, you know what? It's an AutoStore. It's a Locus. It's a goods to person, whatever it might be. Prologis has the talent pool and the engineering design and the people inside these warehouses in order to drive that.
It's a great point, and I think that's what we are developing towards. And I think we got a question from the audience, and I think this is the right time to just get included. Is like, what does Prologis does, and Prologis and automation? How did we get together? And I think that's building upon Jason what you said. I think it's, to put it simply, Prologis helps in two ways. We help you identify what's the right robot solution fit, automation solution fit for you, and we are building internal capabilities for that. And B, because of the real estate business that we have, the Prologis essentially is an offshoot of that. I think we have that power to leverage our real estate business to come up with creative financing. So that basically helps with your two main barriers to automation and robotics. So I think that, thank you for putting that. And I think that aligns with the question we just got. And I think I want to go to Jon now. Jon, what are your thoughts around figuring the right robot solution fit or the automation fit for anyone's warehouse?
Yeah, I think similar to kind of where you just were, actually in network design and thinking about, the freight and shipping costs of things is largely or usually intertwined with the in-building changes or updates you need to make and what's happening in the business. So not just current state, normal continuous improvement that I agree with Jason and Ninaad. You need to look at variable cost per unit, where are the biggest pain points, what's coming up from the floor, the Gemba, the team on the ground and what pains they're trying to solve. But at a higher level, you have, what is your business trying to do? Are you adding products? Are you trying to change your network so you have different shipping nodes? Are you trying to change your customer service level to take market share from a competitor or to onboard an acquired business or something like that? And so often there's a large interplay between, say, the building assets and the automation that might either leverage certain building assets better or allow you to extend the life of a facility that has a good workforce and an in-house team. So those things are not to be separated. And, it doesn't have to be a large consulting study with multiple years. Like, these things can happen pretty quickly with the right study by Prologis Essentials, with different technology partners that have some resource for this. So it doesn't have to be all in-house, I think, is the other point.
Makes sense. And I think now, if we have to, let's zoom in, narrow down to a warehouse, like four walls of a warehouse, right? So we talked about the barriers, we talked about how to solve for it or how to identify it, but let's go to the implementation. I think that's where this is where the rubber meets the road. And that's where I think I want to, Jon, take why don't you start and help us understand, when it comes to the implementation, when it comes to planning for the implementation, what are the key considerations to be done? How do you think about it? And just, again, broad picture for us.
Yeah, I would say it goes back to a little bit what we were talking about with, having the right people around the table. So you're going to need your software team. You're going to need your facilities team. You need to plan out the space usage within the building, because any change is going to require some adjustments to areas that in operations or supply chain engineering owner doesn't have. And so making sure they're on board early, they're aware of requirements, and that you have the right outside advisors, whether that's around fixing the floor for wheeled robots to drive on the concrete, for a system like an ASRS to have the right floor flatness, whether that's complying with fire code regulations, or really a big area that I think is cumbersome for a lot of folks is around the software integration and making sure the robots are being leveraged, connected to the WMS. And there's typically that middleware layer, execution software, that is making sure that those robot assets are being deployed correctly and being fully taken advantage of. So I think those are some of the key, having all those people involved as early as possible and making sure there's enough resources around all of that is critical.
Makes sense. And I know, Ninaad, you will have a lot of thoughts. So why don't you go last? Jason, what are your thoughts on? I saw Ninaad light up when John mentioned WMS integration and the challenges around
I
it.
was like,
So, Jason, why don't you go? And then I'll ask Ninaad. So, Jason, what are the key consideration when it comes to implementation for any kind of robots or automation in a warehouse?
So first of all, I'm going to let Ninaad talk about the WM integration because it's crazy important. But I love. I'm going to say this disruption. I want the least amount of disruption when I go into a brownfield or a greenfield site. I want to ensure that if I am and John's right, you bring all of the players, all of the people who's making and have investments in this. But I want to ensure that if your warehouse is operational, you got to maintain it operational. You got to get it going in the most simplistic way. The jobs that we want to put out there is to go into a facility, learn the facility, understand how they're processing either a pack out or a put away or a case pick, wholesale, retail. It doesn't really matter to me. It really is understanding how they're doing it, and then what's the impact of a AMR solution inside that world without that huge amount of disruption. And Ninaad, I'm leaving the rest to you, man, because he's right.
Listen,
WMS is important.
Listen, I'll try to. So yes, I will only stick to the implementation from a systems perspective conversation, and I will not try to make it into a rant. But I just want to explain. So there is WMS, there is WCS, there is WES, there is robotic control frameworks, there is walled garden ecosystems that each of these providers then bring to the table. Like think about Apple versus Android, right? There is open specs. There is robotic integrators like SVT as a solution, which is, again, a Prologis investment, if I understand correctly. You have so many choices on that front. You need to first pick the right partner. Also, don't just go for the easy answer to say, yeah, A connects to B. Just because our robot connects to our WMS does not mean it's connecting the way your operational is most highly effective from a throughput perspective. So you need to ask certain questions to say, what is my most effective flow? So before you even choose a robot or any other automation solution, make sure you have a really ideal design that you bring to the table. And then from a systems perspective, make sure that you can align that to it, because I have seen places where systems integration will cost more than the automation itself that you are implementing. Just the fact that you are integrating a system. And that's actually the case in a lot of cases, right? So you just need to be able to make sure that the WMS that you choose has the highest level of flexibility in the future, right? Today you have what you have, but knowing that your automation is going to be a big part of the play, that the other thing, if you are going to be doing multi-system orchestration, which means you are going to make Locus talk to AutoStore, talk to, T-sorts, talk to bunch of conveyors, you might want to think about a warehouse execution system that actually brings everything together. WMSs, and I know a few of my WMS friends might not like me saying this, but they are not the best systems at actually orchestrating machines at that level. So there is a lot to be considered on that front. But simple automation, your WM should be able to handle it. Make sure you choose the right WMS.
Makes sense.
And I could do an entire webinar on this subject, and that's why I'm going to try and
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that,
Yeah.
Ninaad. I can see that. That's awesome. No, thank you everyone for that insight. I think the integration is critical, because I've also seen horror story where the best of the best technologies are not performing because the integration is not right. And it's nothing against, it's not the robot provider's fault or automation provider fault. It was just the integration, whatnot, enough resourced or not given enough priority, and that which becomes not a good referenceable client, if you will. So I think, Ninaad, we did get a question for you. I do want to, I think this is time to bring that question as well. It's like, you were leaning towards like a phase automation approach when you think about packaging and a phased automation approach. So can you help us elaborate on alternative strategies for implementation? So the question says, can you elaborate on alternative strategies for implementation?
Absolutely. And I mean, if you are, let's think about it this way, right? Like in most cases that we see right now is people are going into new facilities and they are starting to engineer new facilities. And if you start the engineering, start to think about not to boil the ocean day one by bringing in everything one shot and turning it on. I mean, it's conventional wisdom. It's not the right thing to do, right? You try to do it in a phased manner. And that could be as simple as, yeah, I'm going to bring in AutoStore first or AutoStore last, whatever works for you. I'm not saying there is an ideal way of doing it. What I'm saying is there should be a phased approach to which you should be rolling out your implementation. Because it's a transition, new facility specifically, you have this ability to be able to say, I'm going to bring in pack automation first, right? Keyword here, work area balancing. You need to make sure that your work area is always, the flow of products through your facility is in a balanced format. So as you think about your, if you bring in an AutoStore and now you have a big jam to get, because you have 50,000 packages to ship out and you don't have a ship sorter, you got a problem at hand, right? So you need to think about how to kind of phase that. And the same logic is applicable when it gets down to a brownfield site, which is completely manual. I just want to state one number that Marv Cunningham from Prologis used on the podcast that I host, which was only 7% of warehouses in the United States have any level of automation today. Mm-hmm. That is a mind-boggling number. So let's address that 93% right now. If you are starting to think about it, yes, the low-hanging fruit first, but work area balancing. You do not want to create a situation where you are basically choking your flow. So when you start addressing, you might be taking pairs. I might do pack and ship. I might do pick and ship because that's where I get the greatest bang for my buck. So that's kind of the phased approach that you might want to take into consideration.
John, Jason, quick thoughts on that question?
Maybe just briefly, that the one alternative to phased approach is to make sure you're thinking about fewer touches. And maybe this is just my own personal philosophy when we're thinking about fulfillment, but I think we disintegrated the fulfillment workflow into lots of little touches that look fast with lots of pieces in between them. But that can become very hard to manage in terms of work area balancing, like Ninaad said. So if you're thinking of a larger change, you have the opportunity for a greenfield site, or you can make one large step change. That's a huge opportunity with today's WES and WMS systems to be able to take a bigger swing and maybe eliminate process steps that are not value added today.
Makes sense. Jason, any thoughts before I go to the next one?
Real quick on my side, what I see in the future, especially with the growth potential of where robotics are going, it's going to be bot-to-bot collaboration, but along with collaboration with other automation pieces. John and I were talking earlier about feeding or decanting from AutoStore, working with other automation platforms and becoming a truly, and I hate saying this word, but synergistic way of working with robotics automation throughout the entire supply chain, from a pack out to put away to a picking process. So it's out there right now. Where do you lay your hands on it?
Makes sense. I think that also sits very well in my next question is like, what does success look like? And why don't you go ahead and start that answer, help us understand what does success looks like when it comes to automation and robotics?
Oh my gosh, there's so many different ways that I look at it. One is, am I solving, and you said it, Parth, at the very start, labor. Am I retaining labor? Am I solving the labor issues? I think that every one of us has seen, walking into a warehouse right now, there's a sign. It's no longer just a banner. It's now posted, I need automation. Am I solving that issue? What about SLAs? And I'll blame my wife for this one. My wife, 3 years ago, if she got something in the mail that was a week for delivery, she was happy. Now, if it's not next day or even same day, she's calling people up. SLAs are becoming so critical in order to ensure that people are meeting requirements. I mean, we've seen it in 2024. I've seen a 30% decrease in e-com deliveries throughout the industry. So all of a sudden, e-com business is still out there. They are fighting for every nook and cranny they can get.
Makes sense. Makes sense. John, what are your thoughts? What does success look like from your automation perspective?
Yeah, I think success, if you can look back on a project and it's now the proudest area of facility, or that you've really, captured the value that the ROI or the business case set up front, and that your CFO nods and agrees. I think the total economic impact of these solutions tends to be bigger than you predict, because it's not just space and labor, but there's the service level enhancements that somebody in your merchandise or customer service team is wondering why there's less complaints nowadays, or you're growing market share, or you're able to intake more products that your team continues to find and grow, right? There's always more SKUs. And so being able to handle those new challenges while having a successful implementation, those are the projects that everybody feels good about. From a fundamental standpoint, when you take a tour and you're able to host visitors and show them this is a huge investment our organization made, and here's all the fruit we see from that investment.
That's a very great point. I think that's how I always talk. Go live is a milestone. The success is the sustenance of the project. That's a great point. Ninaad, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to keep it super simple, cliche, but people, process, technology. Those are the three things you need to measure, right? At the end of the day. So you set yourself goals on KPIs that you want to hit, which is what, both Jason, John kind of hit on, right? I'll give an example. Locus implementation at one of the locations, the manual process was 83, 85 units per hour. The commitment was, hey, we are going to get to about 180. We hit about 230. Success, KPI, right? That's amazing, right? Technology. Is the damn thing working, right? Just making sure that, the connection's working and it does not cost you to maintain. And the technology is more seamless, and just validating that, right? And people. I think the people part is really important. Did you do something to enrich people's life, right? So in a manual environment, if you went in and did something that brought up automation, if that person's walking less steps, are you measuring the score of how much happier your people are, right? At the end of the day, that is just as important, right? As long as you balance those three things, I think if you have check boxes and you can check all those things, success.
Yeah, makes sense. Jason, what are your thoughts?
I will say that when it comes back, I'm sorry, Jason or John?
Jason.
Okay. When it comes down to operational, Ninaad hit it. It's the people, it's the process. How do you get the return on investment? How do you put it all together? And where does it go next? And I loved what he said about how do you enrich people's lives? That's huge. That's critical. It's the most important asset you have out there. How do you do that?
Awesome. No, thank you, everyone. This was really insightful. Last question, and we'll keep it short. Why don't actually let me start this one. I like this one for sure. I like the question that we have prepared for the audience, and we just wanted to make sure that everyone knows, as we are in the forefront of, including all of us, we are talking to a lot of market leaders, a lot of innovations. I think the question was around what new innovations that we are seeing and we are excited about for our customers. I think from our side, I think we are really excited about the Prologis Essentials line of business, because for us, as we talked in the beginning, we are bringing all these synergies between partners together and really helping our tenants, helping our non-tenants as well, actually, to really take the value forward. I think this is the first time that, at least personally, I have seen a landlord really invested in the success of the tenant. So the goal idea for us is to go out there, help industry, help them understand what are the solutions out there, what are the automations out there, and just really be that value partner, value creator for our customers. So building up on that, Jason, quickly, what do you think as an innovation that you're excited about?
Oh, the one thing that I'm crazy about right now is AI. I think we've all heard it. Everyone's talking about it. It is the AI operations out there, more of a predictive AI stack that we're using. It really comes down to the point of how can I learn, how can I make it better, and how can I make the operation flow better. And with where AI is going these days, and the intelligence that's really been driven out there, it's for me it's the AI stack that's being incorporated into all of our softwares that we're doing right now.
Nice. Ninaad, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I got so many. Listen, the one good thing that came out of pandemic, particularly, and there were some good that came out of it, and one I would say is supply chain became sexy. The investment flowed into our industry at the levels that we had never seen before, and so the amount of automation capabilities every year that you see that evolve, and it's like, there is no right answer. It's everyone has their own right answer, and you are starting to see platforms that are serving very unique needs, right? And so the fact that there is so much happening, I think that in itself is pretty exciting from an innovation perspective, that there is so much innovation. The second, completely aligned with Jason, AI. We have not even scratched the surface in our industry like some of the other industries have on the AI front, particularly. And AI is like, think about computer vision, right? Like the fact that your phones can do what it can do today, and you start seeing apps that can help you do certain things, or the computer vision that will be built into the robots of the future, or, chat GPT type tools that are going to help operations drive, and multi-system orchestration, something both John and Jason kind of touched on. It's like, can we have the robots make that very independent decision, not just a directed decision, or a machine do independent decision making to drive the right decisions for my business? I am super pumped and excited about that.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining. That's a wrap up for today. We are out of time. This was an incredible discussion, and I thank each and every one of panelists to join, give us time from their busy schedule. And I was joking with someone that having all the three individuals, all the three panelists in a room would be at least a $10,000 dinner. So I appreciate them spending time with us, giving us insight on how they see industries evolving, getting our questions answered around the barriers, the success metrics, the implementation, and what the innovation they are looking forward to. So we appreciate their time. Thank you. Now, as we move towards the parting thoughts, I want to make sure that as you see all these conversations, when you go back to your teams, what are the key parting thoughts that I want you to take away with is that automation doesn't need to be cost prohibitive. And that's what I think one of the key message that especially at Prologis Essential that we are trying to solve for is we as the panelist said, we are already spending money, right? So we will come up with creative financing to help you, just making sure that you get the automation that you really need, making sure that you have that competitive advantage in this macroeconomic environment. So yeah, automation doesn't need to be prohibitive. There are solutions, there are providers out there who can help you become more, help you solve for that. Also, automation doesn't need to be complicated if you have the right partners, right? I'm not saying that you can solve everything by yourself, and Prologis can solve everything by itself as well. But as we evolve, there are partners who have niche in every vertical that they are playing. But bringing together, working with the right partners is going to be an important a step forward when you're thinking about automation and solving for the complex automation. So complex automation doesn't need to be complex if you have the right partner ecosystem with you. And at the end, it's all about the warehouse efficiency, enhancing productivity, and making sure that your warehouse associates are enjoying that new automation and new technology that being put in place. And I think John mentioned one of the conversation that they're already using cell phones outside, smartphones outside their four walls of the warehouse. So they are tech savvy. They understand how to work around robotics, how to work around automation. So I think that's the third key takeaway I want you to go with to back to your team is that automation actually enhances productivity and enhances worker retention as well. So with that parting thoughts, I hope you found this insights and those conversations really insightful as I did. It was really insightful for me learning from John, Jason, and Ninaad on how they are solving for the industry and how they are helping, and how we as a partner ecosystem, including Prologis, FIQ, AutoStore, and Locus can help you when it comes to solving within the four walls, solving the 10 key solutions within the four walls of the warehouse. So thank you again for taking time and spending an hour with us during on Friday, May 14th. Thank you.